South America was isolated as an island continent for most of the past 80 million years. Since it lost contact with Africa, it was moving westward, drifting westward for a very long period of time, during which most of the major events in mammal evolution, the origination of modern groups, the modern ecosystems, occurred during that time period. Mammals from South America are really interesting because you have some living forms there today, but they don't at all resemble what was there in the past. There was a huge array of extinct mammals that lived across South America that are completely different than what lives there today. These include a group called notohippids. Notohippid means southern horse, and these are animals that looked very much like horses but evolved only in South America and are completely independent from the horses that you found on other continents. There also were giant sloths. The largest were things like the megatherium, and this is an animal that would have been the size of the elephant, roaming across the plains with gigantic claws and ripping down vegetation. You also had roaming around the landscape kind of waddling armored tanks, and these were the glyptodonts. These are gigantic blown up relatives of armadillos. One of the great joys about being a paleontologist is going out and discovering new fossils. The whole country of Chile was virtually unknown for fossil mammals, so we do what we call prospecting or exploration. Andy Weiss has been working with me from the very beginning, back in the mid-1980s. Darren Croft, who's a former student of mine and a full partner in this work, and Reynaldo Chirrier, professor at the University of Chile. Without him and his expertise in the geology of this area, we would never be able to make these projects work. So in the areas that we're looking in the high Andes mountains of Chile, there are thick stacks of rock, thousands of feet of rock, and they represent the flows over millions of years of volcanic eruptions and debris that comes spewing down from the sides of the volcanoes. There are certain kinds, most of them are too hot. What we find is certain kinds of moments where they were just gentle enough that as the debris would flow down off the volcano onto the landscape, it would bury everything in its path. And it has a certain thickness, it has a certain texture, it has a kind of color that for whatever reason is kind of a purplish brown. And when we see a series of these things that have the right textural look and the right color, we kind of home in on that sequence, and then we have to physically get out and look. And sometimes we can land the helicopters. In other cases, it's so steep that we have the helicopter hover and we jump down and they fly away and then come back and hopefully come back and get us. And as we began to explore more and more of the mountains, from the far southern part to the far northern part, virtually everywhere we went, we began to discover new and interesting and important mammal fossils. One of the wonderful things about working in the Andes is that we can be finding fossils that are 30 million years old, and sitting right next to us are smoking volcanoes that are still active today. But because of that, acting and cranking away over millions of years, it provided the perfect opportunity, the perfect tape recorder for the evolution of South American mammals, because it was continually burying a record of the mammals that lived in particular places over long spans of time. Around 3.5 million years ago, 3.5 million years ago, this westward movement of South America led to volcanoes forming the Isthmus of Panama, and that connected by land North and South America. So it ended this long period of isolation. That set of changes, the flux, the movements of the different species from north and south, and the climate changes and the habitat changes led to major extinctions in South America. So you no longer have any of the notoungulates, none of the lid-up terns, none of the giant ground sloths. These things all went extinct. South America's extinct mammals are so strange and so unusual and so wonderful that they challenge people a little bit more. And I think that's what's exciting about this exhibit, is it brings to life these long extinct creatures.